Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever imagined a news app that gives you an OTT-like experience? Storytelling in the news space that is so immersive that you would not want to switch off. Can you imagine news videos which are neither clickbait nor screaming and shouting at you from television sets? Well, stop imagining and start streaming now. Yes, TV9 Network is proud to announce launch of India's first OTT video magazine, News9 Plus. The app is available on Android and iOS devices all across the globe, so go ahead and download it now. Experience news in all new avatar. News9 Plus is your window to the world and the world's window. So I had to make this sales pitch before beginning this interesting and a very colorful, panel that we have today. Jody and Peter, we
Aditya?
are very happy to have you.
Aditya, sorry to interrupt for
please.
a second.
Yeah.
હું મંચ પર બોલાવવા માંગીશ રતીમ દાસજીને અને સાથે જ હું બોલાવવા માંગીશ વિક્રમજીને કે જેઓ ઉપર આવે અને મહાનુભાવોનું સ્વાગત કરે, તેમને સન્માન કરે. જોરદાર તાળીઓ. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shivani. And before we begin this chat, let me begin with Peter. You're already an honorary Gujarati out here. We were briefly chatting, and not just words and the language. I think you have picked up the way the Gujaratis react to certain situations as well. I can totally see that. But let me begin by asking you briefly about your experience here. It's almost 4 years that you've been here. You're an honorary citizen already of Gujarat. But what's your experience been like? Gujaratis are known for their enterprise. They're known for their leadership. They're known for actually driving business, not just in Gujarat, but all across the globe. Is it true for the Gujarati diaspora in UK as well?
Thank you very much. And let me say to everyone, good afternoon. Kem Cho. I hope people are having a wonderful conference. Thank you for inviting me to join. I should confess a little bit that I'm actually also a bit of an Anglo-Indian because I was born in Kolkata in India. And so coming to Gujarat 4 years ago was a bit of a homecoming in many respects. I grew up in India. I spent the first 7 years of my life in India. And so coming back to India and coming back to Ahmedabad was, I think, a homecoming for me. So it felt very natural. It felt very comfortable to be rejoining what was my original family, if you like. And so my experience has been very much a pleasant one and a happy one because of that background and that history. But I think you're right. What I discovered was a huge surprise. A huge surprise because I think some of the misunderstandings about India and about Gujarat, about it being a poor country, a low-tech economy where there were challenges about poverty, there were challenges about social structures. I think that has been, that was very clear to me, none of that is now true. That may have been in the past, but now we have a much more modern, a much more vibrant, a very good word, a very vibrant India, a very vibrant Gujarat. And I think we see the example that India is now leading in so many respects. I think in UK, the contribution that the diaspora has made has been part of that journey to achieve a much more modern, a much more reformed, a much more dynamic economy, a dynamic society. And I think we can see evidence of that in UK. We can see evidence of what Prime Minister Modi calls the living bridge, where the two societies work together so well. And so I think we know that Gujarat is the land of the entrepreneur. We can see that in very strong examples here in India and in Gujarat. We look at Mr. Adani, for example, our lovely sponsor, and we notice how high he has risen in the table of the richest men in the world. An example of entrepreneurship. You could not find a better example. But I also looked to the UK. I also looked at the kind of contribution that Gujaratis have made in the UK. And I found out that one of our leading supermarkets, NyzDU, is owned by two brothers who originally come from Gujarat, the Issa brothers. And so we can see the example of Gujarati entrepreneurship now making real progress in places like the UK and in the US and in Australia. And that's a sign that this is inbred, it's in the DNA of a Gujarati to be an entrepreneur, to be a business person, to look for how we can grow their business, grow their prosperity. And that's a fantastic thing. It's internationally recognized now.
Well, one can certainly see how, deeply you understand the society and the connection between Gujaratis and UK. But taking it to Jodi now, and Jodi certainly needs no introduction. She has been the former leader of opposition in New South Wales. She is the current chair of the Australian Indian Business Council. Let me again ask you about the Gujarati community, down in Australia. I personally remember, I had traveled to Brisbane and Sydney and a few other places with the Prime Minister Modi in 2014 to cover the G20. And my warm experience that remained with me was the local Gujarati community in Australia that was so warm, that was so affectionate. And, they almost took care of me like their family members. Has it been the same with you? What kind of relations that you have developed over the years with overall Indian diaspora, but particularly the Gujarati community there?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Firstly, thank you so much for involving Australia in this wonderful event, because I'm here with a delegation from Australia who are proud Gujarati Australians. And I have been very fortunate in my job as a member of parliament, and I retired from that recently, that I had a strong relationship with our Indian Australian community. But I think you described it as the living bridge, and Prime Minister Modi has been very, very firm on that. I think it's only in the last couple of years that Australia has realised the importance of that, because we know that our Gujarati community in Australia understands the language, the culture. You spoke about their entrepreneurship, but they're ambitious, and I'm fortunate that they're good friends with me, and I've got so many of them that guide me and certainly give me advice as the National Chair of the Australia-India Business Council about what we should be doing as a business council as well. So we're hoping, by the way, that Prime Minister Modi comes to Australia next year, so we would love you to come along as well, and we promise that we will give you another warm welcome. But I just think right now the India-Australia relationship has never been stronger. Australia was the first country to acknowledge India's independence 75 years ago. We've been friends for 75 years, but I think now with the signing of the Free Trade Agreement this year, we are best friends. And next week I'm hosting an event for Minister Nitin Gadkari. We've had Minister Jai Shankar has been with us this week, his second visit. So we're seeing a huge focus on Australia, and I do want to acknowledge Gautam Adani as well, because he has made a very big investment in Australia, and we're very fortunate to have Adani there.
Jodi, if I can take this forward, and you mentioned External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar's visit. Yesterday we had Meenakshi Lekhi, Deputy External Affairs Minister here. And as you all know, the free trade agreement between India and Australia was signed earlier. And of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's focus has been on Australia to a great extent. In his tenure, we've seen a great closeness between both these countries. So how do you see the trade ties really increasing day by day in the current scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the world is noticing the focus that Prime Minister Modi has on Australia. And as I said, we are now best friends, and it's been such a heartening and welcoming initiative, I think, by Prime Minister Modi and our government to make sure that we have those closer bilateral relationship. But the free trade agreement was really, I think, it sort of kicked it off. It's been 10 years since we've been trying to get that free trade agreement. So we're very fortunate that that is the first stage of that is now in place. We've got the CECA negotiations underway, but the ECTA, which is the first stage of the free trade agreement, that should be ratified by our parliament late November. But, you know, if you look at the India-Australia relationship, as I said, it's never been stronger. It's about 25 billion in two-way trade. When we had Minister Piyush Goyal over, he wants it to be 50 billion. You know, so there's a real ambition by both countries to make this work. But I think that what makes this work even more than just the environment that the government is establishing is those people-to-people relationships. You know, we talk about business having to lead here, but that is actually about people. It's about the relationships that people have. And our Gujarati community are, as I said, so connected into Gujarat still. And, you know, we've seen so much foreign investment coming into this state, and Gujarat is really leading the way. So we're so thankful. And you mentioned Prime Minister Modi, but one of the first acts of our new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, was to meet with Prime Minister Modi. That was as part of the Quad as well. So we're seeing it from a foreign policy, defence perspective, but underpinning that is the bilateral trade relationship, which is built on people-to-people relationships. So, you know, I acknowledge our Gujarati Australian community who hopefully are watching your television network today, and we thank you for broadcasting this as well, because it's so important we're acknowledging our Gujarati community around the globe and the role that they play.
Well, Jody, you have been pushing for trade and investments, you know, like nobody else in Australia, India ties. I want to come to the strategic aspects of the relationship as well. But before that, I'll come to Peter. You know, Peter, India and UK have had great ties on education, on science and technology, on innovation. I myself was reading about the visits that, you know, experts and analysts took up to IIT Gandhinagar and several other institutes as well. So, of course, you know, much more can happen in future, but where are we at present, and what has been your experience like in these sectors?
Thank you. This is a really important area of our partnership, of our relationship. Can you hear okay? Yeah. It's a really important part of our relationship and our future partnership moving forward. We have made a number of important steps in the last couple of years to build that up. We had the good fortune to have our Prime Minister visit Gujarat back in April. Our previous Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, came here. And it was a strong feature of his particular visit to talk about how we could unlock the potential of a stronger science and technology partnership with India. And I think we can look at key examples of where that has been really positive. The Covishield vaccine was a development, a UK-India partnership to produce this vaccine in the kind of scale that was required to tackle the COVID pandemic. A perfect example of where two countries come together and solve a global challenge so that we can try and protect our society, protect our citizens against this awful disease. I think that's probably the most obvious example. But we're also, I think, very keen to see what else we can do. Edinburgh University, you were mentioning education, has now opened a campus here in Gujarat with Gujarat Biotechnology Research Centre. The Gujarat Biotechnology University is the name. And it brings both UK experts and Gujarati experts together to look at the challenges of biotechnology and to try and produce groundbreaking research, world-leading research that can be applied and used. We know that in Gujarat we have such a strong pharmaceutical sector. Big pharma is really powerful here. It's a fantastic, I think, idea to have a pharmaceutical, a biotechnology center of excellence here in Gujarat. We also have plans for, we have this week happening again in Gandhinagar, the Defence Expo. And our companies, we have 25 companies coming from UK, and they are very keen to work with Indian companies, Gujarati companies, on the security technologies the challenges we face externally. We heard Mr. C.R. Patel describe a little bit of the challenges of the future that India has to try and now protect itself against. And so I think we can recognize that there is a huge interest, a huge commitment to work together to solve some of these problems. So in science, in technology, in new climate change, we were very keen to see how new technologies for electric vehicles, for better solar power, better wind power, using hydrogen as a new fuel for our cars. All of these could be fantastic opportunities for partnership, not just with the UK, with Australia, with other allies and other partners. We recognize, I think, the opportunity of doing this with India as a partner is a fantastic one, and that's really my job.
Can you tell that there's a lot of competition here?
Absolutely.
In the relationship between India and Australia and India and the UK?
We can work together. I'm sure we can work together.
But Peter, on a lighter note, am I allowed to ask political questions?
Go ahead.
Because there are people out here who are following UK politics very closely,
Yep.
and they're reading BBC and other news sources, and they're reading how there's still a political turmoil underway, and many expect that Rishi Sunak could well be the next Prime Minister.
They are certainly talking about it in the UK. I'm afraid I don't have any special secrets to share.
But you're not allowed to talk about it, are you?
I don't have anything to share anyway, so it's not something that I can give you much more insight on. It is obviously a difficult period. They're going through, I think, quite a tricky time. The challenges of the energy markets, the challenges of the war in Ukraine are creating a lot of turmoil. And that is spilling over into politics and spilling over into our economic relations. And I think that's a difficult thing for us to manage. The good news, I think, is that the relationship with India is rising above most of that. And all our political parties agree that our partnership with India, our partnership with our other allies, in the post-Brexit UK, that we are reconnecting and very ambitious to build stronger partnerships with allies around the world.
Jody, if I can take it a little deeper into the strategic ties, we've seen quite a geopolitical turmoil of late. Peter, of course, mentioned the Russia-Ukraine war, and you've seen, China's tension with its neighbors in the last few years, and the most recent tension at the Taiwan Straits as well. How does Quad play a significant role when we talk about China's, kind of a hegemony in this region? And is Quad trying to keep China under check?
Well, I think the Quad is really important, and as I said, we're hoping that Prime Minister Modi is in Australia next year as part of the Quad. But the Quad, of course, is a quadrilateral security arrangement between Australia, Japan, the US, and India. And I think having India within that quadrilateral security arrangement is critical, because China was and is still a major trading partner of Australia, quite obviously, particularly in the resources sector. But we also know that we have to be able to diversify, and we have to be able to look to other countries as strong partners, and that's where India comes in. I think, you're seeing that from a foreign policy perspective, from a defence perspective, but I think you're also then seeing that underpinned the trade relationship. So I think you've got all of it happening at once, which is obviously incredibly important in, as I said, that bilateral relationship. But I think in Australia, people are really thrilled that we've got this stronger relationship with India. You have to remember that our Indian Australian community is the fastest growing diaspora. Australia is hugely multicultural, but it's the fastest growing diaspora, and number 3. There are more than 700,000 those Indian Australians, and we've got about 60,000 of those that are Gujarati speakers. That doesn't mean that that's 60,000 Gujaratis, but it is people who identify as speaking the Gujarati language. So, it is so important for us, and I keep coming back to this. I mean, Peter has spoken about this. I will keep talking about is this living bridge. And Prime Minister Modi, I think, realised it before anyone else, the importance of that. And I think that, this conference. And I want to acknowledge Sunil and Praful Nayak, who's played such an important role in bringing everyone together. I mean, we're a long way from North America, we're a long way from the UK, but Australia has been included in this, and we're so thankful for that. And so is our Gujarati community. You know, they're really excited that this is on. They're really excited that we're here represented, and they're excited about the potential here. You know, Gujarat has so much to offer. This is actually my first visit to Ahmedabad, but it certainly won't be my last. I can tell you that, because and we have a huge presence here, but it's a relationship that is, it's not transactional anymore. It's a relationship that's built on a warm and genuine friendship, and that is led by our Gujarati community.
Well, I like how you put it. It's not transactional anymore, and that's how it should be. One final question to Peter, and this is again about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and of course, how does UK really play a role in this? And you've seen the Defense Expo that's underway right now, the kind of scale under which it is underway. Of course, we have had defense ties with US, with Russia, and several others, but on self-reliant India and several such schemes, when we talk about trade and bilateral ties between India and UK, how does UK play a more of a contributor here?
Thank you. A really important question, and I'm delighted to say that when British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was here, he spoke with Prime Minister Modi on this very subject, and declared very easily, very quickly, that we wanted to be a partner in how India goes about making more in India. And so the Made in India program, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, is exactly the kind of program that we would like to be involved in. We'd like to be partners. And the UK is very keen to come to India with technology, with new research, with science and innovation, and work with Gujarati entrepreneurs to try and develop the solutions for tomorrow. Whether it's in financial services, whether we're talking about climate change and climate science, whether we're talking about advanced engineering, space research, security interests. All of these areas are hugely important for our future. And we think that working with India, making in India, but a partnership where UK and India can work together on new technologies, on innovation, on science, working in research parks together, is exactly the right way forward. We're very proud of that, very keen to do more. So actually we're excited. We are invested in the success of India for the future.
And Jyoti, would we see you in a much more bigger role when it comes to India-Australia ties? I'm not putting the exact terms here, but certainly.
Oh, look, my future is in supporting the India-Australia relationship. It was something I was very strong on when I was the leader of the opposition and a member of parliament, and it's something that I believe deeply in. It's heartfelt. But there was a comment made yesterday, and I think it really sums up how the world sees India. So there was dependent India, independent India. Now it's dependable India. And I think that's how the world sees India. It's certainly how Australia sees India.
Well, on that note, such a pleasure. Thank you very much, both to Peter and Jyoti, for joining us here all the way from UK and Australia.
Thank you.
And representing both their countries and bringing a change, certainly, to the ties to a notch higher. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.